In an ideal world, we would all agree what a streamer is. Well, this is the Matrix Mini Pro E4. This is a streamer, and I would say that it is so much more than a DAC, and yet the one thing that it does best is being a DAC/headphone amplifier. At $959 it is priced quite competitively compared to the rest of the market, and Matrix made sure that no one would be able to take this one down as far as versatility goes. So on the back we have the cattle plug, which you use to power the Mini I Pro 4. We also have the LAN plug, which you basically plug in your Ethernet cable, because that is how it is going to get most of the data you are going to stream. We also have the digital inputs, and man, this one is rich. We have the Type-C USB input, which is used for those USB flash drives. If you want to read files of one of them, you would need to also install the MA remote or Matrix Audio remote on your smartphone, and it uses the Matrix Audio player app and environment on the streamer itself. We also have a USB audio input, which uses basically your classical USB input to use it as a USB DAC, and I've been able to connect it to my computer. There is no DAC delay. You can play games in real time, you can listen to music, you can watch concerts and movies, and there will be no delay. We also have an optical input, a coaxial input, both of which are very good, and we also have an HDMI ARC input, which is good because you may want to connect this to a TV, and then the HDMI ARC is quite useful. There is an analogic input, which is cool but not that useful. Since you have such a rich selection of digital inputs, I have not found myself using the analogic input too much. So I think that you would either stick with the digital inputs or you would stick to streaming with this one. For the outputs, we have an RCA single-ended output for the DAC and an XLR balanced output for the DAC. And they work at the same time. There is no degradation in the signal quality if you use them both at the same time, and I think that is going to be quite useful. This is because I have used the XLR output to power a power amplifier for my speakers, which is the Ketches S300 Plus, and I've used the RCA output to power my subwoofer. At the same time, there is no delay, there is no problem, there is no degradation in the signal, and I like that quite a lot, because my speakers, the KLH Model 5, need a bit of extra oomph in the lows, and this setup allows me to have the subwoofer, the Adam T10S connected at the same time. That is pretty cool, works flawlessly. At the front we have a beautiful display, which is also a touch screen, so you can touch control it, although it is quite minimalistic and you really need that Matrix Audio remote app for the best control. We also have two headphone outputs, one in the 4.4mm balanced format and one in the 6.3mm single-ended format. There is a touch control for the volume as well, and holding an up or a down arrow pressed on the unit will not keep increasing it indefinitely, but it will do on the remote. Speaking of which, we also have a remote for the Matrix Audio Mini I Pro 4. So this is the remote. It has a metallic surface on the top and the plastic bottom. We have buttons for volume up and volume down, both of which work really well. We also have an input selector. We have a sleep button, a power off button, a mute button, and playback button. So I've used the remote to increase or decrease the volume or to select the inputs, but that's about as much as it does, because there is an on-off switch at the top of the unit, and I think that is so cool. This is in the left corner, and in the right corner we have a Matrix Audio logo that lights up, and I also think this is really cool. The display shows you the current data rate that you're streaming. The display works very well. I think that it is a nice touch, and just look at the unit. I really like the design of the unit. It is not very heavy, and 1 kilogram and 300 grams. I think it is quite light. It is also quite compact, so it has more than enough space beneath my television, which cannot be said about the FIO K9 Pro, which simply doesn't have enough space beneath my television, so it has to sit in the front of the television. This one is much sleeker, resulting in a much more pleasing setup. The most important aspect about it is theoretically the streaming, which I've used the least, because I am not a big fan of streaming. I prefer using it as a USB DAC, where I have access to my entire collection of music of my computer. I was able to play videos, I was able to play games, I was able to do everything that I typically do with my computer. And this one was the heart of the sound, and I like that quite a lot. On the other hand, I was also able to use some light streaming for Tidal, for Qobuz. It should get the certification to be a Roon endpoint soon, and in the near future. Let's have our finger crossed for that. And then you should have all of the streaming you may require. It should be able to use AirPlay, DLNA, and basically all of the popular streaming protocols. When using it to drive headphones, I've noticed that it has quite a lot of driving power, and it has up to 2 watts and 200 milliwatts of power over the balanced output and more than a watt of power on the single-ended headphone output. This is basically enough for every headphone out there. It is able to safely drive Audi's LCD5 if you use a balanced cable. It is able to drive Sennheiser HD660S and all of the other nice headphones that we've been using and reviewing lately. The balanced output tends to sound a bit better. It tends to have a slightly better control and a slightly better dynamic, better resolution and a more forward sound, but it would theoretically have a higher noise floor. That being said, I could not hear that noise floor. So on all of the outputs, it is dead silent. There is no noise floor, there is no noise on either of the outputs. Both the headphone outputs, both of them are dead silent, and the DAC outputs at the back. And I'm quite surprised about this because I was expecting it to be quite a bit more noisy. I've compared it directly to the Matrix Element E, which I reviewed in the past, and I found that the E has a bit of noise over the headphone outputs. So that one was not quite completely silent, while this one is completely silent. I like that. You know, it makes me think at some point we will reach perfection where none of the new devices will have any noise on the headphone output or on the DAC output, so you won't be able to choose either of them based on that criteria. Now, the unit is still a bit warm, even though I haven't used it in half an hour, so that is interesting. So there is not a lot of cooling implemented, but there is none necessary because at standby it consumes at most 5 watts, and even in working it consumes at most 30 watts, which is quite low still for a headphone amplifier and DAC that is so powerful. As I was saying, there is a very definite signature and tuning to it, which is quite different from the Element T. Now for the DAC output, we have a really clean, really natural kind of sound with no coloration. The sound tends to be quite neutral, but it also has a natural soundstage. It has a very good instrument separation, a wide soundstage with very good depth, and the entire sound is really pleasing to the ear. It is a slightly laid back, relaxed sound, so the treble is never harsh, it is never fatiguing, but it is really pleasing to the ear. On the other hand, on the headphone output side, we have a very clear and very definite signature that you will hear with every single headphone or EM. And this is an important thing because when reading the technical data for the Matrix Mini I Pro 4, I discovered that it is supposed to have a very high output impedance. It is quoted to be 11 ohms on the single-ended output and 22 ohms on the balanced output. In theory, it shouldn't be listenable even with full-sized headphones. So I went ahead and paired it with a pair of EMs that have 5 ohms of impedance, which in theory should have resulted in a really poor sound. The EMs were the Hidis MS5 and there was no background noise. I tested with more EMs and there was no background noise. For some reason, the quoted impedance does not result in the expected noise. So either there is some filtering for the output impedance or the output impedance is missing something, like it is 0.11, 0.22, I don't know. But at any rate, it doesn't sound like it has such a high output impedance. You will not hear any kind of noise. You will not hear any kind of problem with the Mini I Pro 4. On the other hand, what you will hear is a very warm, very smooth and very clean sound that has a very good amount of bass. It has an enhanced amount of lower mid-range, which gives instruments with a lower timbre a lot of presence, a lot of power and a lot of strength. It is also very good at presenting music with a very punchy presentation, very good dynamics, and in a natural soundstage. So the soundstage is not very wide, it is not very deep, but it is natural, it is very rounded and very full. The whole presentation is incredibly rich. I really appreciate the overall presentation. It works well for male voices. It works well for female voices too. It is not made for female voices, so there is a bit of a distinction there. I think that it is designed to work better for male voices and female voices just happen to sound good with it. On the other hand, it works very well for drums, for rock, for metal, and it will sound better with music that has a lower tuning. For example, with death metal, with djent, and with music that is generally heavier and sounds heavier, which takes advantage of a higher substance in music. I have noticed that it also has an excellent sound with jazz, with classical. It gives depth to this type of music, it gives presence, and it gives a very good fundamental to that type of music. The bass is able to keep up with every single music style, so it will play along with that music style. It won't be over the music style, it will not overpower the mid-range, but the bass tends to be quite more present than the mid-range. So you'll have a warm kind of sound, a laid-back kind of sound. The treble is not very sparkly, which means that generally speaking, the treble will be quite natural but laid back. So you won't get a very harsh or a very bright kind of treble. You'll get a slightly laid back, smoother kind of treble that is easier to enjoy and to digest. I really appreciate this kind of sound. It is quite fun to listen to. And I think that if you are tired and if you are feeling ear fatigue, then the Matrix Mini I Pro 4 will be a perfect choice for you. Now, it is important to note that the balanced headphone output is quite a bit better than the single-ended headphone output. So if you like a brighter, a more revealing kind of sound, then I think that you'll really appreciate the balanced headphone output. The single-ended headphone output tends to be even more laid back, even more relaxed. It tends to have an even stronger bass, which results in a somewhat biased sound that has quite a lot of bass. Now, I like the sound. It is quite specific. It will work very well for brighter headphones or when you want to tone down a headphone. I would not purchase it for a headphone that is already very dark or very deep or which has a lot of bass. For example, I think it is a very good pairing for Meze 109 Pro, but it is not a very good pairing for Meze 99 Classics. In the same way, I think it is a very good pairing for Sennheiser HD660S 2, but it is not a very good pairing for SD Original, which already had a somewhat warm sound but was quite congested. It is a warmer, more intimate kind of sound which has a lot of focus on the voicing, a lot of focus on presentation. It is not very analytical, but it is very good with detail and with resolution. I think that if you need a device that is really versatile, you will like the Mini I Pro 4. It's like a Swiss Army knife. It can do everything that you need it to do. It has two DAC outputs and you can use them at the same time. I think that alone is a really cool feature. We have the widest selection of digital inputs that I've heard in a really long while, so you have access to that as well. You have two headphone outputs. It automatically detects whether a headphone is inserted or not, and if you have a headphone plugged in, it will stop outputting signal to the DAC output. The DAC output, as far as I could figure out, has always variable volume, which I think is pretty cool because, for example, my speaker amplifier doesn't have variable volume. It is an on-off switch speaker amplifier, so having variable volume is a must for me. That is pretty cool as well. It generally works very well. It is quick, it doesn't stutter, it doesn't have any kind of issue that I've noticed. For example, with Soundaware A1X, the sound was great, but it wasn't quite as practical, while the Mini I Pro 4 is much more practical, it works better. The MA remote app is still not perfect. I don't think any streaming app is, but if you want to use it as a streamer, it should work really well. It is the smoothest, most practical streamer that I've reviewed to date. I think that it compares favorably even to a high-end streamer like Mono Ultra MK2, although as I've noted in my full written review, there is a very stark difference between them. Mono Ultra MK2 can output a digital signal, while Matrix Mini I Pro 4 can only output analogic signals. So this one is an endpoint. It will not output a digital signal to a different DAC. I hope that you will be able to output some love for me and for my channel. Please press subscribe, press like on this video and share it with your friends. That really helps me out. If you want to help out further, you can use the purchase link in the description of the video to get yourself one of those Matrix Mini I Pro 4 streamers. You can also donate. I have a PayPal link in the video description. Just watching this video helps me a lot. If you will watch more videos, it would help me even more. Thank you so much. I hope you know that you are the hero for being here with me today, and I hope we'll see each other really soon. Bye bye.